This is kind of a international episode of the Square and Compass podcast because I am back home in Winnipeg visiting family and my dad and my brother, a Masonic brother who's also my dad. But I'm also so I'm away, but I'm also visiting virtually Florida with the past Grand Master, current Grand Secretary, most worshipful brother Richard Lynn. Thank you so much for being here.
Good morning. Should I say that or should I say hey?
You can say either, whatever you want, right? We're all brothers here,
Good morning.
so A is perfectly fine. I talked to you a lot offline in getting ready for this. Um, you sent me your Masonic resume, and before I talk about annual communications, the thing I love about this podcast is getting the chance to learn things about different jurisdictions that I didn't know. Right, and we were talking offline. With your Masonic resume, um, I said I'd never seen as many honorary memberships to lodges as I did when reading that, right? And you told me something I didn't know about Florida, which is kind of the Grand Master. When you're a past Grand Master, you get honorary memberships in lodges. Can you talk a little bit about that and what the kind of how that works in Florida and honorary memberships for Grand Masters?
Sure. So when we have district meetings, which we have 29 districts in Florida, the Grand Master visits each district each year for an official meeting. Usually have anywhere from 250 to 300 people present in that district. It's customary that the lodges, not all of them, but many of the lodges present the Grand Master with either an honorary membership or an honorary perpetual membership, which they pay $200 into the perpetual membership fund for that special certificate as perpetual honorary. It's not an easy task. The lodge must present um, to the lodge requesting to make a person an honorary member. It has to hold over 30 days, takes a unanimous ballot. If it fails on that unanimous ballot, the resolution has to be presented all over again in another 30 days to make an honorary membership. So most of them are very special. There are many lodges in Florida that do not give honorary memberships out, only on rare occasions. And usually it's to a district instructor that comes and does their lectures for them, or in an instant like that.
So I mean, I think though we talked about right, the main thing I want to talk about with this podcast is annual communications because Florida has theirs coming up in about 2 weeks. I think actually exactly 2 weeks. Um, and I think for a lot of Masons, even Masons who may have been Freemasons for a long time, annual communications still have kind of this mystique to them, or they don't know necessarily what exactly they are. It doesn't help that oftentimes they're called different things, right? For the first 5 years of my Masonic career, I was always, every year in May and June, people would talk about Grand Lodge, but I had no idea to what they were referring, whether it meant the building itself or the officers, or I found out later they were referring to the communication. So
That's
I
why
think
we refer to it as the annual grand communication.
yeah, I've been trying to make a real effort when I speak about it in lodge to refer to it as the annual communication in Ontario, so people know I'm speaking about the actual event as opposed to the the building itself of Grand Lodge or the infrastructure or the officers.
Correct.
But as a Grand Secretary, you're probably the best person to speak to about an annual communication. So starting with the basics, what is an annual communication?
Okay, so if you relate to it in corporate world, a Grand Lodge is nothing more than a franchiser, and it gives charters or warrants to a lodge to operate as a Masonic lodge, much like Wendy's gives franchises to Wendy owners to operate, and then they operate under those rules. So the membership, especially the delegates, and we allow the lodge to select three delegates from each lodge, excuse me, to represent their lodge at the annual Grand Communication. Um, it is by regulation, it's the master, the senior, and junior warden or their proxy. Each one of them have a vote on constitutional amendments and anything that has to do with finances that affect the individual member. So dues increase, per capita increase, those type of things. Um, Therefore, we have normally attending our Grand Lodge around 1,200 Masons, which represent 3 from our 269 lodges, plus past masters are members of Grand Lodge, and the elected Grand Lodge officers, and of course, past Grand Masters. Now, that changes. Under normal circumstances, 1/3 of those are new every year because you have new junior wardens in the lodges. So we do get about 400 get a new experience coming to Grand Lodge each year, which is very exciting. I know that I was raised in January of '74, and in April, our Grand Lodge used to be in April. In April, I was at Grand Lodge. Uh, so a lot of our districts do hospitality rooms, and my lodge took care of a hospitality room for our district. And being in the food business, they tapped me and said, "Hey, come help with our hospitality room." So by regulation, they have to close during the session in Grand Lodge when Grand Lodge is actually open for business. So I went down and attended the meetings and got hooked, and went and started going back to Grand Lodge on a regular basis long before I became an officer in the lodge. So this will be my 50th consecutive Grand Lodge session.
That is
So
very, very impressive.
so a lot of things go on at Grand Lodge. We have social events, um, but the structure is that in our grand jurisdiction, to submit a change to the regulations or our digest of Masonic law or our Constitution, a resolution must be submitted prior to December 31st. Those regulations or Constitution changes go to our Jurisprudence Committee for review and recommendation to the craft as to what the Jurisprudence Committee recommends, that either they adopt it or they reject it. This year, we only have 4 items coming on the slate. A lot of times we have as many as 15. And a lot of it depends on what's going on in the world. People try and want to change regulations to adopt to the new generation coming in. And a lot of times they're adopted, and a lot of times they're not. So it's the same as a stockholder meeting for a corporation. They get to vote on what the actual Grand Lodge, the franchiser, abides by.
And I am really happy to hear you talk about your first experiences with the Grand Lodge in '74 and attending before you were an officer. I have different pieces of Masonic advice I give, whether I should or not. I mean, I'm relatively new, 17-year a Mason, so that's new compared to some. Right, one piece of advice I give is to visit as much as you can, as many lodges as you can. But the other piece of advice I give is, if you are able to, you're able to get time off work or financially do it, attending a Grand Lodge annual communication, even before you're eligible to vote or officially a member, it can be a really wonderful experience. And like you said, it's hospitality suites, it's meeting new brothers, it's learning more about kind of the organization to which you belong. So I'm always trying to encourage even an entered apprentice, if you're able to, attend the Grand Lodge, hang out at some hospitality suites, meet some brothers from around the province, the state. I think it's a very, very useful experience. And clearly it was for you if you're at 50 consecutive Grand Lodges.
And I still get excited in setting up and planning for Grand Lodge because I get to see and have the opportunity to um, see people that I haven't seen for years. but more especially meet some new people that I don't have the opportunity to see on a day-to-day basis. Uh, that's what the fraternity is about. I remember the question on our petition when I joined was, what benefits do you expect to derive from becoming a Mason? And that was a hard question to answer. And my mentor that was filling out my petition, who happened to have been my dad's catechism instructor in the early years, said to me, he said, why do you, because I attended Scottish Rite and Shrine on a regular basis. My dad did all the cooking for them. And he said, what caused you to do this? That's what it's asking. And I said, well, I look at all these men that call each other brother, or some shrine vents, noble, shaking hands and greeting each other like they're truly family. And I said, I want to be a part of that. So,
How do you think, and we talked about this a bit offline, how do you think your professional experiences, especially as it relates to convention spaces and being on boards and, directing kind of convention and visiting events and food services, how do you think that that has impacted your ability to? I know you're not the only or exclusive organizer, but as a Grand Secretary, you're going to be heavily involved in the organization of an annual communication. How do you think that's helped you organize the annual communications, and what type of perspective do you think that gives you on an annual communication?
okay, well, I happen to also be the chairman of our arrangements committee. And I intend on staying there as long as the Grand Lodge officers want, even when I'm not Grand Secretary. But um, we each station and each involvement in Masonry, whether it's on the lodge level or on the Grand Lodge level, or district level for masters and wardens, uh, we need to take advantage of the professional backgrounds of our individuals. That's why our forefathers were smart enough to make the progression line in the lodge a anywhere from 9 to 11 year progression, because not only each station you'll learn something new to bring to your experiences to help the lodge, but we get different backgrounds in the lodge, so that one year you may have a master that's a tremendous organizer. Maybe he's not the greatest ritualist, but the guy behind him may be the greatest ritualist and not an organizer. So taking advantage of professional background, and in my case, I handled some very, very large conventions. I'm originally from Miami. That's where I was born and raised. And I did a lot of work for the county for international conventions coming into town. So taking those experiences and failures, and adapting them to the operation of the actual communication at the hotel, certainly uh, helped me as a Grand Secretary to see what we needed to have done to each year to enhance what we did the previous year.
From from a logistical perspective, again, uh, holding the annual communication in Orlando, that really seems like a big opportunity, right? Orlando, it's got the airport right there. It's got like from a services perspective, it seems like, and this will be I visited Orlando on a couple of occasions, my first time attending an annual communication. It seems like it's a really great opportunity and it's a really good spot at which to hold an annual communication. What's the experience been like with that in terms of the logistics of organizing this event in Orlando, and I'm assuming you're having some brothers coming in from different jurisdictions, flying in. Just what's that been like, the organizational side of it, as we're getting, like I said, about 2 weeks away from the event?
Well, first of all, I don't do it alone. I have a staff here at Grand Lodge that have 20 or more years experience in getting the communication together. And the actual logistics of the Grand Lodge session um, are only a very minute part of preparing for Grand Lodge. I mean, we give every delegate a packet that has all the legislative actions, the budget, committee report books, uh, all in one packet, including a booklet that has flyers from lodges that are doing fundraisers and what have you that they want to get to the delegates. That's all done way in advance. And of course, putting all that together takes a professional staff, which we have. In addition to that, we have a volunteer staff called the Arrangements Committee that have all been attending Grand Lodge for many years and assisting in the setup. So some of the logistics that are tough are, for instance, Sunday night, we either have a Grand Master's banquet or a reception. Last year and this year, we're doing reception, so it's not as formal. It's a little more meet and greet type of a situation. That takes up 1/3 of the ballroom that we need set up for Sunday morning um, uh, to start. Monday morning to actually start our Grand Lodge session. So after that event, the staff has to come in, and we bring DMLA boys in and assist the hotel in turning that room over and setting it back up to theater type seating, and finish with all of our electronic setups that we need to have prepared. So there is a committee that does that. They all have their little niche that they kind of take control of. And if you don't micromanage them, it usually goes pretty good. The Rosen Hotel, I'll give a commercial break. The Rosen Hotel that we've been going to for almost every year in the past 24 years knows what we want, knows our demands, knows our needs, and very accommodating. And that's a big thing. One of the experiences I took from my business was we go to a new hotel. The first thing I do is ask for the head of their maintenance, and I want to go out and see the generator start up and run, and I want to see how much fuel they have on property. Only one time in our Grand Lodge session have we ever lost power and they had to bring the generator on, and it happened to be the year I was Grand Master, and it was in Tampa. So again, the logistics are not easy. For instance, in Orange County, just to set up our display area in the outer lobby of the ballrooms, and there are only tables that people put displays on and maybe sell rings and trinkets, we have to get a fire permit. And it takes about 4 hours just to file that fire permit. And then before we can put anything out, we got to wait on Sunday morning until the inspector gets there and gives us the go ahead. So there's a multitude of layers, and hopefully you peel those layers back, having individuals to make sure that it gets done properly.
I really love the fact that you mentioned the hotel. No, I mean I have no connection to the hotel other than I'll be seeing it soon. But one of the things that has driven me crazy about Freemasonry in the last little bit, and I'm guessing maybe from your professional experiences, this is maybe why you mentioned the hotel, but also kind of you might have a different perspective on this, right? It seems that there are some Masons who maybe don't, it is my opinion, don't recognize the importance of Freemasonry, Masonic jurisdictions making connections with local businesses, the local community, local shops, whatever that might be, right? I've written a few articles about this. To me, the success of Freemasonry and the success of the community in which it's located, you can't separate those two things, right? There's no benefit in having a really strong lodge if the community around that lodge is suffering or in danger of economic collapse, whatever it is, and vice versa, right? The stronger a city is, the stronger the Masonic Lodge will be. And I think it's incumbent upon Masons, as much as we can, to be supporters of our communities, of our towns, of our cities, and of the businesses therein. And whether that is giving a shout out to the hotel that's hosting a Grand Lodge annual communication, whether that's making sure you bring in local vendors for refreshments, or, we had an event in Windsor. Um, to my knowledge, and somebody may correct me on this, to my knowledge, it was the biggest gathering of Freemasons in Ontario outside of the annual communication. When we had this event, we invited local shops and local sellers to set up displays and sell their products during the event. So I just think what you just said, it's a really good example of the value and the importance of Freemasonry creating partnerships and supporting the communities in which they're located or they're traveling to or whatever it might be. I'm guessing that from your professional experiences, that's probably something that you also or maybe have an eye towards.
Well, I did that in my professional life. I relied on local businesses um, to be subcontractors and supply the items I needed, because just like the basics of Freemasonry, that personal one-on-one relationship can't be replaced by contracts. Um, when we go into Masonry, that one-on-one handshake and that one-on-one instruction means the world to a new Mason coming in, and sets the framework for his future involvement with other Masons. And it's a domino effect. It's, starts with one, and as they temple and move on, hopefully they left somebody to replace them that had the same ideals and precepts. Um, in business, and I can tell you, when we go over for our pre-convention meeting a couple months out, and we go in to have a meeting with the hotel staff and make sure that everything is on target. The Grand Master can pick out the meals that he wants served, and that type of thing. As we walk through the lobby, the employees there who have been there for multiple years greet us by name. They know who we are, and they always express an excitement that pretty soon we're coming back. And a lot of it has to do with economics, I'm sure, because the bellman, from the bellman up to the wait staff, probably do very well from tips from the Masons attending and staying in the facility. But it's also, you can tell that uh, we become part of the family, just like we do in our lodge. Hopefully, we become part of the family.
I think that that is absolutely the right approach to take, just me personally. And I think it's wonderful to see, right? And it goes to this idea of, which I've talked about as well, relevance in the community, right? When we talk about the different ways to measure success of a lodge or success of Freemasonry, one thing I try to emphasize is how relevant is Freemasonry to the membership, but to the communities in which it's located. If 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 the lodge, if the Masonic body were to disappear tomorrow, would anybody in the community notice, or would anybody in the community care? And in the case of what you're saying yourself, I mean, it sounds, if nothing else, like the staff at the hotel would care, and the staff at the hotel would notice if Freemasonry was a part of it. And I think that's a wonderful thing, and I think it's a testament to not just your leadership, but the leadership of the Grand Lodge in general in this event. So that is wonderful to see, and I can't wait to be there in a couple of weeks. Like I was saying, what would you say you are most looking forward to, um, aside from the day after Grand Lodge when you can or the day after the end of communication when you can relax a little bit? What are you most looking forward to during the communication?
Well, first of all, the day after Grand Lodge, some of the work just begins. Um,
That is very, very true.
we take an 18-foot cube back truck to Orlando with all of the items that we need. We actually set up a full Grand Secretary's office there in one of the suites. Um, so we got to get that back and get it unloaded and put it away. I don't do that personally. Don't misunderstand me. But then our work starts to get the proceedings done from the annual grand communication, to get the, if there's any regulation or constitution changes, the insert for the Digest of Masonic Lodge out. Um, all those things need to be done, and we start on it immediately. There's no overlap. And then we have, of course, our corporate board meeting, formation meeting, and then we have our board of trustees for our Masonic home meeting. Masonry does not stop or sleep. But what do I look forward to? I think I started out by telling you I get excited every year for the opportunity to shake the hands and get some hugs from brothers that I don't see throughout the year, but I see them at the annual grand communication, and maybe a few hugs from their wives too. But to mainly meet some of the new upcoming Masons. I got to tell you, I have some very good expectations of the future, especially in Florida, of Masonry. I see the young men that are coming in, the Xers and the Ys that are being involved in Masonry now, and their attitudes. I get excited when I get around those young men and see the excitement that they have for the fraternity. I was fortunate to be an executive officer of DMLA for Florida, and I can't tell you how much I learned from those 14 and 15-year-old young men about what the youth is looking for the future. So going to the annual grand communication, I can listen to some of those younger guys and hear what they expect out of the fraternity. Yeah, occasionally I try and change their mind. When they talk about doing lodge meetings on Zoom or on Teams, I'm adamantly opposed to that. But that excitement is what I look forward to and gets my adrenaline pumping. And back to your other comment, on the bottom of my emails, now you didn't get it because we use my personal email most of the time, but on my Grand Lodge email, other than some Masonic protocol reminders, I have a statement on there. If your presence doesn't make an impact, your absence won't make a difference.
Which I think is a perfect expression as to relevance. And so that is very, very cool that you'd say that. I think that's awesome. It's unfortunate because I have to run back to the airport in a second. We'll have to have you back on the podcast to talk more about virtual meetings and Zoom meetings and stuff like that, because that's a whole topic in and of itself, especially kind of exacerbated, or not exacerbated is the wrong word, pushed along by the pandemic. I'm not sure to what extent Florida was locked down, but I know in a lot of jurisdictions during lockdowns, when we weren't able to meet in person, a lot of jurisdictions moved to various types of Zoom meetings or virtual meetings. Some were tiled with ritual, and before you got in, you had to. They did depend on jurisdiction. Before you got in, you had to. I remember being on a Zoom meeting where there's like a waiting room, and I had to talk to somebody in the waiting room before they let me in. And other jurisdictions had meetings, like in Ontario, we had virtual meetings, but we weren't allowed to perform ritual, and they weren't tiled. They were kind of just more informal social gatherings, which I think there's a really interesting place for virtual, but how it works and the logistics of it is a really interesting idea and something worth talking about, because there's different ways to do it.
So fellowship and non-esoteric, I have no problem with Zoom meetings or team meetings. Just like the podcast. I mean, there's a lot of podcasts going on Freemasonry.
One in Florida, right? One in
yeah. We have one in Florida. You have the Scottish Rite has Maynard, that's on a regular basis. And they're good builders of knowledge and fellowship. You get to hear things just like you started out about the Grand Lodge. What is Grand Lodge? Is it the meeting that we have, or is it the building, or is it the Grand Lodge officers? I did a podcast one time on brick and mortar, comparing the building to the craft. So these podcasts are great. I think you get some misinformation on some of them, but that's part of life. You could do that in a face-to-face non-virtual meeting. But keep up the good work and keep getting the information out there to the craft. It can only benefit us.
Thank you so much, sir. And most worshipful Brother, I thank you for your time. I thank you for all your help, all your answers to my emails. I can't wait to be back in Orlando and I've never been to that part of Orlando either. So I'm looking forward to that as well. And I just look forward to meeting some Florida brothers. So thank you so much for your time. And I look forward to seeing you in person soon.
Let me give you a couple of numbers before we sign off. We will have 83 distinguished Masons internationally attending our Grand Lodge communication, representing 9 jurisdictions, 7 past Grand Masters from other jurisdictions, almost the entire elected and appointed Grand Lodge of Prince Hall Masonry. We have the Bahamas, the Turks, Scottish and English Constitution. We have Paraguay, Brazil, Mexico, and Lebanon all attending our Grand Lodge. So you're going to be able to meet some people from all over the world, and that's what it's all about.
That is wonderful. And I also think that that is a testament to, I know you, as you said, right, not just yourself. It's a testament to the Grand Lodge of Florida and the fact that an annual communication would be so well attended, not just by the jurisdictional brothers, but by international brothers, past Grand Masters, different jurisdictions. I think that's just a testament to the organization of it and to its reputation as being an annual communication that is worth going to. So I can't wait. Congratulations again on past successes and also what I'm sure will be another excellent annual communication.
Good. You have a safe trip.